Welcome everybody to the meeting of the Planning Committee, the extraordinary meeting of the Planning Committee tonight. Can I remind everyone that this is a meeting held in public, but not a public meeting. If anyone wishes to speak, will speak at the discretion of myself as chair. There is public participation, up to 20 minutes in total. So at that point you'll have a chat. That could be Dale.
It is.
Oh, wait, one second to Dale to come up.
Just for the right purpose.
Here we are.
Hey there.
Will, how are you? Here we are.
Hey there.
Will, how are you?
Yeah, good, thank you.
Barney?
Dale?
Yeah.
Dale,
Sorry,
started.
Right, item 1, 21, 22, 52, apologies for absence. We don't have any apologies, do we, Nick, because we're all here?
Yeah.
21, 22, 53, disclosures of interest to receive declarations of interest from councillors on item on the agenda. Do we have any? David?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a declaration of interest of clarity. I know quite a lot of people in and around the site of the application. I have a whole heap of correspondence and I have not submitted any comments to Bradford Council as of this time, so I don't want to be predetermining the discussion this evening.
Okay. Steve?
I may have predetermined because I put an objection into Bradford Council Planning Portal before you called the EGM, I believe. Right. So having thought the discussion was over, I think I'm okay because of the timings involved to speak, but I may well consider what happens as we discuss.
At what point did you put it in, Steve? After the last meeting, obviously?
After the last meeting, when we'd voted,
yeah.
But I think before the EGM was called. I wasn't aware the EGM was being called at that time.
Right, okay, well, yeah, I mean, you've done it, haven't you, so that's, yeah. To receive written Lewis.
I submitted a note on the planning application as well. That was in support, albeit tentatively so. That's my personal opinion. I did do it because I'm new to this, so I may have broken the protocol here. Didn't intend to. That was submitted, I think, over the weekend. However, the point of this is to represent people. So if, for example, the council here were unanimously bar me to vote one way, I would have no problem voting the other. However, in the interest of the community, if it were going to be a tight vote, I would vote to represent and object.
Did you do this in the name of Lewis Curdail?
Yes.
As just,
Yeah.
not a member of the planning committee?
Oh,
No.
Me as well, as a personal resident. Yeah.
So noted. To receive written requests for dispensations for disclosable pecuniary interest. Have we had anything, Nicola?
No.
And to receive and consider, so we entered any. Right, 21, 22, 54, public participation. As I said, there is a 20-minute slot. So if somebody would like to speak now or wait till...
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay, and you are?
William Cartwright.
William Cartwright.
Yeah.
So before you start, William, are you the only one that's going to be speaking?
And I'm here
Right.
Lisa and I are
together for
working together.
So you
on
have
this.
10 minutes each and no more.
7 minutes, 7 seconds.
But what if anybody else in the public wants
Yeah,
to
does
speak
anybody else?
as a result?
They haven't indicated, so no. Right, well make it as brief as you can then if somebody else wants to speak.
Okay, there'll be some time.
Right,
Okay.
William. Okay.
Thank you for calling this meeting and giving myself, William Cartwright, and my neighbour Lisa Sumter the opportunity to speak. We represent about 60 households in the immediate vicinity of the hotel, but many of our concerns are shared by others, with over 400 objections submitted, and we have asked others not to attend today to ensure this meeting can go ahead in this small venue. Our main concerns can be grouped under 4 broad themes: lack of transparency and information, noise and antisocial behaviour, crime and fear of crime, and lack of support services and facilities. I'll address the first 2 issues before handing over to Lisa. The community speculation surrounding this planning application is regrettable. However, it was only yesterday, with 1 week of public consultation remaining, that the applicant provided information about the nature of the use via formal channels in an amended supporting statement, which simply states, the property will be a home for 6 to 24 months for young adults who are generally working or at college, with occasional skills support from staff to help prepare them for independent living in the community. Staff are on site 24/7. As observed by many objectors, it appears that the applicant may have initially provided minimal information with the aim of slipping under the radar. Unfortunately, this has sown the seeds of mistrust. There are many unanswered questions in my mind, including information about where the residents will be drawn from, how complex will their needs be, and can they be met in this location. I assume some will have become recently homeless and others will be drawn from children's homes, foster homes that cannot cope, and possibly young offenders institutes or other secure settings. It might be less likely that we're talking about young adults choosing to leave successful foster homes. I fear we're talking about some of the most troubled in society, and their issues may have consequences for our community. Other than 24/7 supervision, how will the premises and the behaviour of challenging residents be managed? And what will staff to resident ratios be? Presumably, occupants have nowhere else to go and simply cannot be evicted for antisocial behaviour, petty crime, or refusing to partake in education, apprenticeships or work. Might residents only be removed if they commit offences or have issues that merit detention in a secure setting? And might the community, including other residents of the home, have to tolerate them until this high bar is reached? How will public complaints be managed and issues resolved? How is this type of establishment regulated? And which public sector agencies and council departments have been consulted about the proposed use? And what are their expert views, having taken into account evidence? Beck Lane and the surrounding streets have a semi-rural character and are prized for their relative tranquillity, not only by residents but the wider community, and indeed visitors from further afield who use the area as an important recreational resource. Background noise in this location is low, so much so that the bypass is often the most noticeable sound of noise. It's therefore a location that's particularly sensitive to noise, such as loud music, shouting, the revving of car engines, or attendance of emergency services. Although impacts would be greatest on immediate neighbours, they would also affect the wider community and visitors who greatly value this peaceful neighbourhood. I believe some other establishments managed by Horton Housing, including Fairmount Lodge in Shipley and the notorious Millhaven Flats in Manningham, can at times be noisy, but it might be that they are not comparable either in terms of the nature of the use or indeed the sensitivity of the location. Have the council's noise experts within environmental health been consulted, and if so, what's their view? If such establishments generate noise issues and complaints in urban locations, often close to busy roads, might they be greatly magnified in this location? I do doubt the building and location will work for either existing residents, care home residents, or indeed the council, who might be left to deal with many foreseeable complaints concerning noise and antisocial behaviour. I'll now hand you over to Lisa.
Thank you.
So, and you are Lisa?
Sumpter.
Lisa Sumpter.
Yes.
How was spelling that, please? Just for the
Oh, sorry. Sumpter.
Did you get that, Nicola?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this area of Bingley in question mainly consists of families and elderly people, many of the latter who are vulnerable and live on their own. Currently the area is considered to be a safe community which is visited on a regular basis by many residents of Bingley as a popular walkway to Bingley, Eldwick, Crossflats and Micklethwaite, for access to the canal, the Five Rise Locks or to visit the local beauty spot of Prince of Wales Park. This is also a main path for school commutes of children of all ages walking to the local primary and upper schools such as Lady Lane, Priesthorpe, Eldwick, St Joseph's, Crossflats, Bingley and Beckfoot. A large proportion of these children, predominantly Year 6 in primary and all high school children, travel to school on foot, unsupervised by an adult. One of the main meeting places is the entrance to the hotel, the other being the corner of Hallbank Road, overlooked by the hotel. The fact that there is going to be a minimum of 13 young adults residing at the hotel with potential drug, alcohol and mental health issues does concern me, as I'm sure it will many parents. I live 2 doors away with a 12, nearly 13-year-old girl who meets her friends daily on a daily basis outside the hotel gates, and I am not sure I'm going to be comfortable to continue to let her do this based on the limited information I've been given so far on the potential residents of the home. The people of this community care about the area. Many retired people work tirelessly and voluntary on keeping the Prince of Wales Park as a natural beauty spot for the people of Bingley to enjoy. Are Bingley Town Council confident that these young adults will carry that same appreciation and respect for the park, or will they see it as a place to congregate due to boredom? The park is not well lit, has no CCTV, so it's a perfect location for groups to gather, meaning people using the park to walk dogs, take young children to play, or walk through on their way home could feel intimidated by groups of teenagers gathering in it. And remember, these are teenagers from troubled backgrounds. If this was to happen, it could result in the park no longer being used and becoming an area of fear rather than beauty. What controls and provisions will be in place to stop these young adults from not using the many places in this area, such as Prince of Wales Park, Five Rise Locks, many unlit snickets, as meeting places to use drugs or drink? If the appropriate support and supervision is not in place within the establishment, these areas are perfect for them to visit and potentially give in to the addictions that they're trying so hard to beat. I am compassionate to the advice these young children obtain while being resident in these facilities allows them a better life, which they deserve. It would be naive of us to think that this is always a smooth journey and a success for every person going through this journey, as unfortunately it's not. And due to the fact that they are from troubled backgrounds, many with addictions or already have been involved in crime, they will be entering the facility with lots of issues to work through. And during this period, I am certain these issues will not be contained within the building and will have an impact on the local residents and increase the fear of crime, which may or may not always be substantiated. The application for the change of the use of the hotel states slow intervention. I am not sure what this means and whether it's suitable for these individuals with complex needs. This all creates concern and fear within the local community, and I believe Bingley Town Council has an obligation and duty of care to ensure that the residents of this area are comfortable about the fear and disruption a call out to the home from these services can mean to residents. Many call-outs result in the need for a first response team, more than one unit and many lights and sirens. At times, search teams are required if a resident is missing. All of this will increase fear and anxiety in many residents of the immediate area. Some of these children will be vulnerable, and within 500 metres of the home there are canals and locks, opportunities for potential drowning, bridges over high-speed bypass and train lines and access to train lines, all potentially used for threats of suicide. Woodland areas and large wooded private back gardens and allotments which provide much cover within searches. The likeliness of all this is high based on the similar establishments, and the searches and emergency services attendants will be intrusive within this neighbourhood. Disturbance will be high within a heavy populated residential area which mainly consists of family and elderly people. I've presented you with numerous reasons as to why there needs to be further consideration as to whether this type of establishment is suitable for this residential area. But in addition to this, there needs to be consideration as to whether this location is suitable for the young adults who reside within the home. We've already touched on some of the complex needs of these individuals, and I'd like to know if Bingley Town Council believes Bingley has the infrastructure to support these young adults outside of the home. Horton Homes Chartsford Housing has shared very little information with the planning application, and Bradford Planning chose only to write to 10 households. But upon further inquiry by Councillor Dearden, Horton Housing did state the residents of the proposed home must be in further education. Bingley has no provisions for further education, which would mean they would need to commute to a college within Bradford, Shipley, Keighley or Skipton, and whilst I appreciate there is a train station and bus routes, this would involve at least a 15-minute walk to the nearest station or road, followed by a further journey by bus or train of between 15 to 30 minutes. Is it not a requirement of this type of care to provide easy access to education? Therefore, is this location suitable? Do you think there is enough for them to do in Bingley to keep them busy and active and assist with changing their past current lifestyle and behaviours? There are no facilities for any teenagers at present. No pool, no cinema, no bowling alley, no youth club and no shops that I imagine would interest them. We already know that some of these young adults will have drug and alcohol problems and some will have mental health issues. There are no support services within Bingley for young people with these problems. Mental health, drug and alcohol rehabilitation is either accessed in Keighley or Bradford. Bingley has no full-time youth workers and no access to probation services. Is this fair to these people that they are brought to live in this home, they are vulnerable and need assistance to move towards independent living? But from the very little information that we have, it seems they're basically being given a bedsit within a nice area with a house warden and very little else. Is this potentially setting them up to fail, and is that fair just because Horton Housing managed to get a property for a bargain price? Thank you.
Thank you. So on that basis, is there any other member of the public wish to speak other than William? No?
I just wanted to summarise.
Very quickly then.
Yeah, very quickly. Okay. In my opinion, and based upon a limited information available that inevitably results in some assumptions, the proposed use will be better located in a more urban area characterised by high levels of background noise and less noise-sensitive uses within the immediate vicinity, streets and public spaces that benefit from good street lighting, natural surveillance and CCTV, a minimal number of unlit or poorly lit footpaths, bridleways and towpaths, a limited amount of recreational and visitor activity, particularly at night, existing police presence and capacity to promptly respond to incidents, a limited number of young families, children and elderly persons, amenities to positively entertain residents in their spare time, such as leisure centre, cinema, bowling alley and youth club, and easy access to a wide range of support services with educational and other daily needs, ideally met within walking distance. The proposed location is the opposite of what could be considered a good and appropriate location, in my opinion. In summary, our main concerns are as follows. 1. Insufficient information regarding the nature of the use, its management and likely impact upon the community to inform adequate consultation and decision making. 2. Potential noise impact upon a sensitive neighbourhood that is well regarded by residents, the wider community and visitors for its relative tranquillity and high standard of amenity. 3. Potential adverse impact upon crime and fear of crime in a location that's very well used by pedestrians and cyclists for commuting and recreation despite poor street and natural surveillance of streets. And 4. A lack of easily accessible services necessary to support and positively occupy the young persons to be housed. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Well,
Are we, given the 20 minutes hasn't expired, are we as councillors able to discuss and respond to that? Because it was interesting and I just...
Not really.
Not really?
No.
Can I just say thank you then? I thought it was very well presented.
No.
Okay.
Chair, will it be possible for those notes to be handed in to our clerk?
Nicola has been taking all the notes, haven't you? Nicola's got them all.
Great.
21-22-55 planning applications. Consider further comments for the following application, which is 21/05321 Five Eyes Locks Hotel Beck Lane, change of use from C1 Hotel to C2 Care Home for the provision of low intervention care to individuals. David, would you like to kick things off, please?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad we're back to actually have another discussion on this one. There's only a scant amount more information arrived since the initial meeting, and I've received an email which says yes, we can go look at one and it's for young people, but that is what they are saying. Once C2 Care is passed, any of their clientele could come and reside here. You can't discriminate within planning as to what usage, age range or what have you within this circumstance. So we started with a Sir Genis, which was the initial back of the envelope application, which all I could find in there was a hostel. I think they then realised that's maybe not the right way to go, and they've now gone for C2 Care Home. But the gentleman there mentioned that within the information that's now being received, occasional support, we have to ask, is that care? I don't think it is. And if you are having a care home, then the residents of it will need full support care because they are unable to perform many or most of their daily tasks. From what things are sounding, it actually sounds more like a hostel for people to come and sleep, even if it is for a few months, rather than actual care. Occasional supervision, and they actually use low intervention. Well, low intervention to me doesn't really mean care. And I think what planning and ultimately Bradford planning need to consider is this C2 use going to be C2 use or isn't it? Because if it isn't, then they've applied for the wrong thing and we need to go back to square one. And planning must also consider, and I think bearing in mind the what the applicant actually purports to housing on their own website, is this appropriate for a quiet, secluded neighbourhood? You know, we don't have support for young people, drugs, alcohol, mental health. You know, all these services are either in Keighley, Shipley or Bradford, so we're going to be putting, most likely, deprive people, whichever out of their client base it is, I just will focus on young people, in quite an affluent suburb, in quite an affluent town. Much of the you know, we need to look after people, we need to get them the help, but is this the right place? And I think many of the comments our two speakers here came up with, to me say, I don't think it is.
Anybody else who's next? Want to speak? Dale, Lewis?
All right, okay, I'll go. Yep, I am a local resident. I overlook the property. I'm a former neighbour of Will's, really quite close. Long time ago, I used to go out with my wife on days off while my 3 children were in school. I always reflected, what would happen to my children if a lorry ran over our car? The answer is they'd go into the care system, actually, and in society. I think there is a lack of information and transparency about this. If it's drugs or alcohol rehabilitation, then I'm against this proposal because I think it's unsuitable. But if it's simply to accommodate 16 to 18-year-olds who are emerging from care homes and need their first step on the ladder for themselves, then I'm in favour of it. So I'm slightly ambivalent there. I remember myself that actually I needed the support of my parents until I was 23, after I came back from an assignment, 4-year assignment in Africa. And I believe, as I say, that we have a duty of care to young people. Oh, and by the way, I know personally students from Keighley and Heaton in Bingley schools, so school places I don't think are a great argument.
Lewis?
It's further education more than school.
Sorry.
There was a question from the floor. I'm happy to answer it, Chair. They're in secondary education.
No, Dale. No.
Okay.
Lewis?
Yeah, so is it Miss or Mrs. Sumpter? Mrs. Sumpter, Mr. Cartwright. Although I spoke at the start and said I was in support of it, I find it quite difficult to disagree with a lot of what you said, actually. And there isn't an awful lot of people to do that are around that age. That's a problem that we've got that I would want Bradford to help out with. I don't think that 13 more people that will struggle will make that an awful lot worse. Although with that being said, if you had a difficult upbringing, it might bring about behavioural issues. So I can appreciate those comments. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is I can appreciate both sides of the argument, and it's a difficult one.
Okay. Alan?
So, first of all, I'd like to say, and I'm sure that nobody who's bothered to take this, but the amount of disinformation and misinformation and, to be honest, lies which this issue has generated has led to a feeding frenzy of negativity and downright nastiness. And I find myself appalled, really. I thought that Bingley residents were fairer minded than this. This could have all been avoided if Horton Housing had given much greater clarity and detail in their application. I think they're grievously at fault. Given the scarcity of factual information, I think that this planning committee made the right decision to make no comment. We are a parish council, we are not statutory authority, and we can only recommend to Bradford Planning. We don't get to make the decisions or apprenticeship or employment. Bingley schools all have sixth forms. Beckford, Bingley, what's it called, Dixon's, even Salts. We have a train station, we have bus stops within walking distance of the hotel. There's no evidence, there are only assumptions of that. What I want to know is why can't they have the same equality of opportunity as my children had, being brought up in Bingley needs. It applies to all children, and these children are disadvantaged. They're young adults in need of support, guidance and stability. And I think it's very wrong to people to assume that they are offenders or ex-offenders or addicts or criminals or any of those things. Some of the comments that have been made on social media and some of the emails that the council have received suggest that some people need to educate themselves on what hate speech is and what the consequences of it can be. It's criminal behaviour. I think it's the council's duty to provide them with a secure, stable environment in which to make the transition to adult life, just as any of us would wish for our children or grandchildren. I think it's correct that Horton Housing are planning to hold a public meeting in order to address residents' concerns. They should have done it sooner. I hope that when this public meeting happens, that people will ask questions, such as have been brought tonight, very pertinent questions. I hope people will listen and will judge on the facts they're given, not on this dreadful peddling of and frankly discriminatory attitudes, which to me do Bingley no credit. I am ambivalent. I can see all the arguments, but I also know from almost 40 years in education that these children need a hand and a leg up. They don't need to be demonised.
Thank you, Ellen. Rachel, will you?
Yes, well, I'm also in background in education. I teach in a school in Bradford that has a very high level of deprivation. I work with children who are in the care system, and I can tell you right now that these children are not alcoholics. They don't smoke behind the bike sheds. They don't deal drugs in the toilets. They are very vulnerable children. They need their hands